My name is Sherrie. I was born and raised in the city of Detroit on the west side. I grew up in a neighborhood that by today's standards will be called low income, but I didn't know it at the time. Where I grew up, on a block with families and children, where we played outside all day, playing together, and we ate what I call the original Lunchables, which was empty bowls that we took outside that we would collect mulberries and pears and apples and all kinds of fruits and things that were growing in the neighborhood and sit on the porch and eat. And our original juice boxes came in the form of water hoses that we drank out of on the side of somebody's house, wherever we were. So we played in our neighborhood for hours, which turned into weeks and months and years because we all lived on the same block for a long time. But when I was a kid, I never thought about things like urban agriculture or farming or local growing because nobody I knew did that. When I grew up and went away to college, I moved to the suburbs for a few years. And at the age of 38, I moved back to the city of Detroit, and I quickly realized that things were different. I couldn't easily find things like the fresh fruits and vegetables and organic produce that I could find right up the road in Livonia or Birmingham or in Dearborn. I also noticed something else was different about the area where I grew up, is that there was less of a lot of things. Less businesses, less schools, and less people, and less houses. And so I had the opportunity to be introduced to something called urban agriculture, which was a new term when I was 38, but it seemed to be something popular happening in the city. And so I had the opportunity in the form of a fellowship at a farmer's market to learn about urban agriculture. And that became an exciting journey for me when I learned that people inside the city of Detroit were actually growing food, like actual food that you could eat. Pears, cucumbers, squash. And this was amazing to me because even when I was a kid and some of our elders used to have like the backyard gardens and my aunts and uncles and my grandmother would try to get me to plant with her, I was very, very adamant that that was not what I wanted to do. I was a city girl and I was not about the backyard garden life. So at 38, when I started to spend time with urban agriculture in an amazing neighborhood called Hope Village at the Hope Village Farmers Market, I started to discover that all around the city, gardens were popping up, green spaces, things that people said were great for neighborhood revitalization, and food was growing. But then I noticed something else, because I would sit in meetings with people, philanthropic organizations and community stakeholders and all these groups of people that said, gardens are great, green spaces are great, these things are great for the neighborhood, they're gonna revitalize, they make everything better. But as I worked with the farmers market and I moved throughout the city to see more and more of these spaces, I noticed something common was happening. I would see spaces that had been planted but never fully developed. And then I would see things that looked more like a desert than a garden, though they were designed really nice. And what I discovered was what was being planted wasn't being planted the right way. What do I mean by the right way? Things were being planted, food was there, crops were there, the zucchini was there, the kale was there, but something was missing. And I realized that there were certain conditions that were missing and certain seeds that were missing. And so I want to share those with you guys because there's lots of them, right? So the way that things were being planted wrong was that nothing was being planted in connection. And by connection, I mean in connection with people. Spaces were being cropped up, things were being designed, empty lots were being renovated, but no one was connected to it. So what would happen, and you've probably seen this, is if you've gone to a place and seen what looked like it might have been a garden that now looks deserted, or someone's yard who was really excited about getting into gardening until they realized how overwhelming this seemingly relaxing hobby could be. So what I started to learn was that when people plant in connection with one another, we plant better. We've been told a lot to just do something as individuals. You know, plant a garden, go out and start something in your backyard or on your windowsill or in a little pot on your desk. It's great for you. It's gonna lower your stress levels. And that's great when we do things as individuals as far as the marketing companies are concerned, but not so great in our communities, especially in low-income communities. What we found was that when things weren't in connection, nobody participated. So we ended up with empty green spaces that soon turned into brown spaces. So how do we plant in connection? How do we get people involved in this urban agriculture and plant the right seeds the right way? Well, what are some of the right seeds? Well, the first right seed is a welcoming environment. Part of my journey in the Hope Village Farmers Market was planting flowers and things to beautify the space for the neighborhood to come in. And one day, two elder women walked up to me as I was weeding in the garden, dancing and listening to R&B, because that's the best way to do your weeding in the garden. And they walked up to me and they said, "Thank you for doing this here." And the here that they were speaking of is a park on the west side of the city of Detroit that borders Highland Park that in 1997 was the site of a tornado. And so decimation, homes destroyed, was a horrible site, and then became the site of intense illegal dumping. So it was almost a trashing ground until a local organization decided to renovate it into a park, to a beautiful little gated park with gardens. And so when I started volunteering and I worked in this garden, and these women from a senior citizens home next door came and said, "Thank you so much for doing this here, because we've never seen anything like this here." Because in this neighborhood, we didn't grow dahlias and verbena bonariensis. We didn't have those things growing up. We didn't have food growing right next door, not on purpose anyway. The mulberries were great. But that sparked something in me, because I realized they felt welcomed into this space. They felt welcome to come in and hang out with the children at the farmers market, and seeing the seniors talk to the school-age children and show them how to fly kites and show them how to knit and share skills with them that they wouldn't have normally had, were the seeds of connection, were the seeds of the welcoming environment where everybody felt like they could come in, where we had people from the homeless housing across the street and the senior citizen home and the school children all together, and the working class people from up the street all working together, all singing and dancing together, because they were in a welcoming environment. So one of the seeds that we have to plant is a welcoming environment. The second seed, which goes back to those same events, is intergenerational communication. One thing that I learned about in the garden is that whether you're 5 or 65, nature works pretty much the same. Everybody still has to drop the seed in the ground and wait for it to grow. Everybody still has to wait for the fruit to be ripe to eat it. And we all are kind of on a level playing field. There's no technology that anybody has to be afraid to use, though there's apps, we have apps. But in the garden, young people and older people and adults and children can all work together and help each other, because everybody has the ability to help and take part and feel like they belong in connection. Because in the garden, diversity is important, and so we don't want anybody to feel left out. The next seed that we have to have in the garden is sound. I'm big on sound, and one of the things in urban areas is you're always listening for things. And one thing that always gets everybody's attention is loud noise and music. So in the garden, I believe you have to have the seeds of sound, whether that is music, whether that is laughter or drumming or dancing or children playing and reciting, or a wireless Bluetooth speaker playing everything from Sam Cooke to Stevie Wonder to Beyonce. There has to be a sound, because sound is a universal language. Music is universal to everyone and makes people feel like there must be a party going on. Let's go see what it is. And so if we plant the sounds, more people get drawn into our urban spaces. And the last seed that we have to have in all of our gardens and urban agriculture is purpose and participation. One thing that we find in low-income areas is there sometimes is a divide between people who are employed and unemployed. And we know in low-income areas, unemployment is an epidemic. But in the garden, there is no resume workshop. There is no what school did you go to? In the garden, everybody can drop a seed in the hole. Everybody can tend the soil. Everybody can pour water. And in the garden, many people have found their purpose. I've met people who didn't fit into traditional corporate settings and didn't know that they were farmers until they were exposed to urban agriculture, and didn't know that they could produce food for not only themselves, but for dozens of households. And they found their purpose. The garden allows everybody to have a purpose and a role, and to fit in and to feel like they belong, which is what breeds connection. And so the seed of participation and purpose is vital in every situation where we want to see connection. And so I challenge everybody to grow in connection, because food grown in connection tastes better. I'm certain of it. The fruit is sweeter when it is grown in connection. Food has less calories when it was grown in connection. That might not be totally true, but you got to trust me on that. You won't gain as much weight if you eat food in connection, okay? So my challenge for everyone is to find someone, even though you could grow on your own, even though you might have the space or the seeds, grow in connection with someone else, because when we grow in connection, we grow our communities. And when we grow our communities, we grow ourselves. Because when we grow together, we grow together. Thank you.